Hello, everyone, and welcome to Creation Station, the podcast where we talk about the law of attraction, the art of allowing, spiritual magic, the mind-body-spirit connection, and how to best enjoy this mystical, miraculous, mysterious, crazy, sometimes confounding, but always incredible journey we call life. This is Season 3, Episode 2, and we were recording this on Sunday, January 16th of 2022, and this episode is scheduled to go live on Monday, February 7th of 2022. My name is Collin. I'm a teacher, tarot and oracle card reader, and I'm also the singer and guitarist in the band Red Treasure, and I am located here in beautiful, sunny North Hollywood, California.
Bravo. That was beautiful.
Thank you.
My name is Stephanie Orlina. I am a transformational life coach, and I help people shift away from negative thinking and their lives transform. And I am in San Diego, California today.
Which recently experienced a small tsunami, I heard.
I heard the warning yesterday morning. Thanks for cell phone service. But I don't know of anyone who had any experience. So there was a little, huh?
There were some high waves.
Okay.
That's pretty much the extent of it. We want to thank you so much for listening to our podcast. If you're listening to the audio version on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, CastBox, or Overcast. And thank you so much for watching us. If you're watching us here on the Co-Creation Station YouTube channel, we post a brand new episode every Monday morning. We want to thank you so much for liking this episode, following, subscribing to, and reviewing us on your podcast platform, and subscribing to our YouTube channel right here. All of these things help other people find us, and we are very grateful to you for that. Please also leave us a comment if you're watching us here on the YouTube video, or you can email us at cocreationstation1111@gmail.com. Each week we start our discussion from a different jumping off point, and this week we didn't really settle in our friend time on a topic 100%, but we just got ourselves into a very high vibration and set ourselves up for a great at least 24 hours of art of allowing magic, I think, off that. Just so you're not out of the loop. What we did was, first of all, I was trying to play a joke on you. I was trying to play a joke on Stephanie. I found this video of, it was from Helsinki, Finland in 2016 on YouTube. And for their New Year's Eve celebration, they had a gigantic electronic music concert, apparently. And they played Sandstorm by Darude. And there's this big build up at the beginning of that song. And when they had this countdown going, and they had lasers and flashing lights and everything. And then when they finally got to the high point of the song where it kicks off, that was midnight. So it was New Year 2016, I guess. And they had fireworks and more lasers and loud music and people jumping and screaming. And my joke, which didn't work very well at all, was that I wanted to have
forget how sarcastic he is. I'm gradually learning.
Yeah, which is I said I had an inspiration for our new intro, and I wanted to show it to Stephanie. And I thought it was a great match for our happy yet chill vibe here on the podcast. And of course, that was ridiculously over. But it was really cool.
It was awesome.
But then after, and you thought I actually wanted to do that and have
or something similar. Yeah. I'm like, okay, we could tone it down a little, but yeah, that would be
I
fun.
think if we could,
make it 10 seconds long.
I feel like we might be able to convince somebody to do like a little bit of music intro. Because the podcast, and the other thing is the people who are listening to this are like, well, there is a musical intro, which we forget here on the YouTube channel because we don't have that.
But it's not original, yeah.
But then I showed you, I'm a huge college football fan, and I showed you many, many weeks ago what's called the Kick Six, which is the incredible 2013 play where Auburn won the game on the final play of the game and knocked Alabama out of their chance, University of Alabama out of their chance for the national championship. And then this past Monday, the University of Georgia and the University of Alabama played in the college football national championship here in the United States. And the University of Georgia won, but the way in which they won the final piece to the puzzle of the win was a surprising and very exciting moment for fans of the University of Georgia. And so I played Stephanie what ended up being the last important play of the game. Georgia scoring their last touchdown. And then we watched 15 solid minutes of just iPhone shot footage of University of Georgia fans at home, but lifetime at the time, watching the final play where Georgia actually wins the game and losing their minds.
Yeah, so if
Families, spouses, children.
anybody wants to raise our vibrations, we've talked about this before. You want to feel
Yeah.
better, like we can do many things, and one of them is watch videos of things that make us feel good. So
Yeah.
imagine watching and listening for 15 minutes of people cheering, yelling. I've never seen so many men jump like 3 feet off the ground. I'm like, wow, they can actually do that. Like just jumping like actual 3-year-olds and five, but these are grown men and women screaming and yelling and people like hugging and just like I got chills up my legs. And when he caught the football, like I'm not a big football fan or anything,
Yeah.
but you show me some great shots. When
Yeah.
he caught the football, I had chills. So talk about a physical response to
Yeah.
something that was good. I felt it. And when you
Yeah.
replayed it, it was the same experience. It was
Yeah.
great. But to watch people for 15 minutes cheering and laughing and crying and over the top happy. Like I told Colin, like, how are we gonna do the bit? Like, how are we gonna do it? I'm like, we are such in a high vibration.
We just feel
right
like
now.
we won the national college championship and had fireworks in Finland over it. How do we do the podcast from this?
I'm like, people are gonna come on going, what is going on here? But we're just in this state of like pure joy right now.
I think, several things about that hit me. And, by the way, I mean, this is something that I learned in the film The Secret. I think this is one thing they do cover really well, which is, if you're feeling down, and again, we delineate between, I at least delineate between, like, if you've lost a loved one or something, we're not saying don't grieve their loss. This is like, if you're just like sort of your negative self-talk has gotten you into a bad mood. And
yeah, everyday life, you're just kind of like, meh.
Yeah. You're trying to shift your vibration. You just want to be in a better state. So you're because you're feeling better, which is how you always remind me, like the point is to feel better. It's not to like attract more stuff. That does happen, but the point is to feel good. So like, you can change your vibration in those situations. And I think like the technology we have now is just crazy. Like YouTube has, no matter what you're into, if you love cute, puppies, there's like cute puppy videos.
I have a lot of friends who
days,
are really into those. Yeah.
Yeah. But like as a college football fan, I mean, I watched that 2013 the end of that Alabama Auburn game. Over and over again. I would say once a month I put in 30 minutes of watching that, just because, I mean, I'm a football fan and it's just exciting to watch, but it's hard to have a bad day when when I put myself in the vibration of watching and listening to 100,000 people just be in like the highest state of joy, and not just that, but also expressing it, screaming, jumping, loud music blaring, as you mentioned, the sports, just the tone of the voice of the sports announcers.
Oh yeah, that
was when they call the play, and they in live time at the time, carry your emotions from like this sort of normal place up to like, oh my God, and he's going to the end zone.
That's a big part of it, because just visually watching it is, it wouldn't be as much of an effect as like hearing the announcer.
Yeah.
It's has a huge impact on the experience. Yeah.
And that's what's wonderful. If someone listens to this and they couldn't care less about football, I'm totally fine with that. But the thing about those two particular plays, which were both end of the game and a very, very important game at the end of the year, they were surprises. They were surprises. Like, nobody thought that they would happen. And they unraveled the game in a way that nobody thought the game would unravel. You're hoping your team wins, but in both those plays, like there's this moment in the 2013 game. It's not when he actually the Auburn player catches the ball, but it's when he makes it past the last Alabama guy. And you can see everybody gets this, 100,000 people get this view of like, oh my God, he's going to the end zone for a touchdown. Like, and you can just feel the vibration, just like everybody's vibration goes. And in this one, you're right. It's when the Georgia player, defensive player, intercepts the pass from the Alabama
That
quarterback.
was huge.
When there's something about that catch too, where he just like, he's a huge guy and he just catches it so perfectly. Like he has it. It's not a question.
It was
Like
really beautiful.
that's an interception. Like Alabama lost the ball. Like that guy has that ball. But there's something about that moment of him. It shifts, all of a sudden you just sort of, if you follow the game, that if you're a Georgia fan, you're like, oh my God, we just won. Like in catching that ball, he just shifts the whole thing of like, the outcome is in doubt to like, we're going to win. And then you feel everybody's vibration just be like, ah! And the thing I love about those reaction videos too, is as someone who did acting for a while in my past, like the emotional connection between the body and, because we talk about the mind, body, spirit connection on here all the time, but the emotional connection between what people are feeling and their body is hilarious because in everyday life, even when we're around our families, like sometimes we have to, but like people control their emotions. They don't express them physically. But when sports fans are watching a moment like that and it happens, what's hilarious about a lot of them is they lose control of like looking foolish or whatever, and they let their bodies, or either they let their bodies do what they wouldn't do, or their bodies don't give them a choice. I feel like we saw people like they have to run out of the building. It's like they literally have to run out of the building.
I love that part when they like, and for most of the people watching, it's almost midnight.
Yeah, on the East Coast, it was it was almost midnight.
Because I saw the time clock, I didn't even think about that. But they literally go running out of the house and scream because they have to express it, and they want to share with the world, like, oh my God.
And there's something like, I think that's the thing, when I was your client, one thing you really emphasized with me, and you helped me with it tremendously, but it's something I need to continue to work on, is celebrating things. Yeah. Celebrating. Because in our society, I feel like there's so much pressure to like achieve and accomplish and like do more, do better, whatever. But then it's like, oh, like don't, like if you do accomplish something, like just go on to the next thing.
I know, we do that.
And I think in observing like, like just as a fan on TV, watching interviews and games and things, watching high level college athletes in the United States and high level American athletes in the professional sports here, baseball, football, like one thing they do really well is the really good ones is they really celebrate a victory. And then they move on to the next thing. Like they don't feel like the victory is like the end of everything. But they make sure they celebrate it because they understand how hard they had to work for it. And I think so often, at least here in America, like we don't do that. Like we work hard and we have these accomplishments, and it's almost like, I think you and I both had this experience with our friends, and I know I've even done it. It's like I'll share an accomplishment and someone will give me a compliment to help me celebrate is really what they're doing. And I'm like uncomfortable. I'm like, oh, it wasn't that big of a deal. And, luckily today I have friends in my life like you that say, no, that's a big deal. We need to celebrate that, Collin. And that reminds me like, oh yeah, you're right.
Or even like the smaller things. Cause I love Abraham talks about, it's not about the destination, it's about the journey. And so that's why, like, when I do, and I had a mentor years ago was the one where like, how are you going to celebrate? And that's where I picked it up. That's how I've become self-educated as a coach, is like picking up all these things from here and there and everywhere. And I picked up one from you, and I share this all the time, is like, well, if you don't ask, it's a no. But if you ask, it could be a yes. And I use that in my personal life all the time when I'm either afraid to do something or, it's just like, well, I don't know. Like if I don't ask, I have nothing to lose because it's already a no. But if I ask, it could be a yes, And so, but I just pick up these little nuggets everywhere, and that one about celebrating. And so the whole thing is like, if I do something, if I take a step towards something I'm wanting to experience or a goal that I have, I do my best to try to celebrate that, because it's part of that. It's not until the end, because even when we get to the end, we're like already on to the next thing. It's like, wait a minute, we've worked really hard to get here. Like, let's celebrate. That's just a big deal. Like, because we certainly do the opposite. We
Yeah,
beat ourselves up. Oh, it took me so long, or I'm not
exactly.
doing it, or meh, meh, meh.
Yeah.
But
Um,
yeah, that is something.
another life coach I worked with who also helped me a lot, Ella. She taught me something that has really stuck with me, which is that part of the reason why it's important for us to celebrate is that it associates something we did that we like with positive emotions. It matches
Mm,
it marries those in our brains.
mm,
And so often we associate, like we've talked about here before, like if we want a new car, we don't get the new car because of thoughts and beliefs like I don't deserve a new car, I can never afford it, I can't leave my job right now, and I can, they'll never give me a raise, blah blah blah, all these things. And so we're actually in neurologically like stitching something we want to negative emotions,
yeah,
to feelings of lack and deprivation. And what
yeah,
celebration does is it does the opposite. It marries the things that we want, that we like, to positive feelings.
yeah,
So that, and the more we do that, the more we start to, you get momentum with it. And it's like you
yeah,
start to associate, when somebody mentions something that maybe you don't have in your life yet, but you want, you start to feel positive feelings rather than you're like, oh yeah, that would be great.
yeah, yeah.
Instead of your brain just defaulting to those negative thoughts and those
That's
negative
great.
feelings.
That's great. I love that.
Yeah.
Ah, woo.
I think the other thing about that, because you before I even showed you any of the videos, I was trying to explain to you that, literally for the last 20 years, not only has Georgia not made it to the national championship, but it's usually the University of Alabama that in some way prevents them from getting it, because they're in the same conference with them. They always end up having to play them, and they're quite often, I think over the last many years, you could argue they were the second best team in the country, but they got no chance at the championship because they just couldn't get past Alabama in their own backyard of the games they have to play with them. And you said something before we even started watching videos, like, oh, so the Georgia fans have a lot of negative vibration going on.
A lot of resistance. Yeah, they have
A
a
lot of
lot of
resistance.
resistance.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
resistance like doubt and fear because
yeah.
of past experiences, right? So we're like
Right,
running those thoughts through our mind and we're
right.
having emotion about it and there's like all this.
Yeah,
So, but they have now a new neural pathway,
yeah.
thinking of brain stuff, they have a new neural pathway that was created on Monday night by the win.
And I
And
try to,
positive emotion, like,
yeah,
Ella taught you, yeah.
yeah. And I try to, I don't know, I try to stay a little bit out of. It's easiest for me when I'm thinking about how is the law of attraction working right now, and how can I employ the art of allowing to use it most to my advantage, to think about one person at a time, like either me, or if somebody's asking me for assistance or guidance, we're talking about them. When we talk about groups, it gets very complicated, I think, because in any sort of group situation, like a big sports game like that, you have vibrations of hundreds, potentially hundreds of thousands of people. You have the players, you have the coaches, you have the fans, you have the alumni, you have, people watching at home who don't care. And there's all these. I remember at some point, Abraham in one of her workshops says, like, if you really want to make sure you're successful with the art of allowing, don't play sports, because every game has to have one winner, one loser.
Well, that's
And there's
yeah.
always a group vibration going on. So you can have the best vibration in the world. You can play the most amazing game or season or whatever. That's not going to guarantee a win. If you can keep things about you, then, you can kind of
Well, and think about it. I think Ted Lasso show is a really great one where it can take one person to lift everyone up.
shift. Yeah.
And I think that happens a lot in many of the really great teams of any
Yeah.
sport or in
Yeah.
even any business, whatever,
Yeah.
any group of people, where it can take one person who is in the vortex, who
Yeah.
is connected with source, to bring everyone up. Because I love Abraham's one who is in the vortex is more powerful than a million who are not.
Yeah.
That is badass. When I
Yeah.
think about, like you saying, like one person, like, oh, it doesn't matter what anyone else is doing
Yeah.
because I give my power away if I do, right? We give our power away.
Yeah.
Um, it matters what I'm doing, how I'm thinking, how I'm feeling, because that's the only thing I control. When I take care of that,
Mm.
then everything else is kind of
Works out.
irrelevant, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. Yeah. I wanted to share a story because it's an interesting thing. I don't know if I've ever talked to you about this. So, have you ever seen the film Fever Pitch with
It sounds really
Drew
familiar.
Barrymore and
What's it about?
not Jimmy Kimmel? Gosh, I'm blanking on his name. It's about
Oh, the baseball. There, it's
yeah,
about he's
he's
really in. She's
a
dating a
teacher
guy
in
who's
Boston.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Uh-huh. I did see that.
So the backdrop for that, so the story's fictional, but the backdrop of what's actually happening in the Red Sox season that year actually happened. And that was 2004, if I'm remembering correctly. And I've been a diehard Boston Red Sox fan since I was a little kid. I grew up in Maine. We're very close to Boston. So everyone is I'm not trying to make excuses, but everybody's a Red Sox fan. It's actually what we found out. Actually, is some friends and I found out later. Not everyone in New England is a Red Sox fan, but the Red Sox fans are the only ones that talk about it. So there are some Yankees fans and other fans, but they just don't mention it because they're too scared of the rest of us. And they should be because we're crazy.
I was going to say not everyone, because that's not generally how life is. But yeah. I hear what you're saying.
Yeah, no. It's hard for us to acknowledge, but we now know that there are a few fans of other teams living in the 6 states. But they're just keeping quiet because they know better. But so in 2004, but to go all the way back to 1983 when I was 13 years old, 1986 when I was 16 years old. I was a junior in high school, I think. The Red Sox had made it to the World Series for the first time in many, many years. And they were in a clinching game. So if they won that game, they were going to win the whole thing. It's best of 7. And they had a pretty good lead. It was late in, I don't know, it was 8th, 9th inning. And there's this sort of legendary play. They were playing the New York Mets. And there was this legendary play where one of the New York Mets, the New York Mets were up to bat. The Mets batter hit the ball. It was like a routine ground ball that went to first base. And the poor first baseman of the Red Sox, Bill Buckner, who had a very rough life after this, honestly, it went through his legs. Like it took a weird little hop on the grass and it went between his legs. The Mets ended up winning. And then the Mets won the next game and they won the whole World Series. And so not only did the Boston Red Sox not win the World Series that year, they kept not winning it year after year after year. And, despite lots of good teams and getting pretty close and everything. And in 2000, and usually very similar to this Alabama-Georgia dynamic we were just talking about, the Red Sox are in the same division with the dreaded, for us, New York Yankees. And because of that, the Red Sox and the Yankees are quite often each other's, hurdle to success, in the playoffs. It's like they've got to get past them because they're in the same division. And so we made it to the playoffs as a wild card. The Yankees won the division, but we made it in as a wild card. But then we had to play the Yankees in the first round. And it was it was the second round, I guess. Sorry, second round. It was best of 7. And the Red Sox lost the first 2 games, and then they lost the third one. Like I think the score was 15-6 or something,
oh, wow.
Which is like nobody ever scores 15 runs in a baseball game. It's like we got crushed, and it was at Boston, like it was at home. They got crushed, and I was living in New York City, and Kelly, who's been on this show before, was coming to visit me that weekend in New York City. And she came down, and I wanted to show her where I went to work. I was going to take her around to like different places that were familiar to me in New York. And it was this weird thing because it's literally like they were going to play in it was the final game in Boston. So they were going to play in Boston that night. But it's like, we're 2 Boston Red Sox fans. We're going to walk around Manhattan all day, the day that the Yankees are most likely going to knock everybody out. But the morning of after the big loss, I was at work at my day job, I think, and I had written an email to all my coworkers. And I don't know, I wasn't really into the law of attraction stuff that much yet. but I had this weird optimism, and I just wrote an email to all my coworkers, and I just said, I think we're going to win, and I think we're going to win the next 3. And I hit send, and I remember thinking when I hit send, like, oh God, like I'm going to get this deluge of negativity back. Like people are like, Collin's crazy. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And instead I got the opposite.
Nice.
And New England fans we definitely had a negative vibration going about the Red Sox. Like that 1986 thing, it's the way that a lot of people say, like, well, I couldn't move to LA and be an actor because I auditioned for this play in 7th grade and the director said I was terrible. And they used that one thing, that one experience, that one moment of life. Yeah, it was so hurtful. Yeah. They used that as like, I can't do it for the rest of my life,
The story.
And honestly, the Red Sox Nation was doing that with 1986 World Series. It was just like, we would just always talk about it. In Fever Pitch, when, why can't I think of his name?
Yeah.
Jimmy Fallon. Jimmy Fallon.
There you go. Yeah.
When Jimmy Fallon gets really depressed and he wants to make himself feel more depressed, he pulls out a tape of the 86 game and he just watches it on repeat, and his friends have to save him from it.
Yeah.
But anyway, so Kelly comes down to New York and we're going to go out, and I'm like, and I look as we're about to leave to get on the subway to go into Manhattan from Brooklyn, and my Red Sox cap is like on my bureau, and I'm like, I'm just aware that if I wear it, I'm opening myself up to Yankees fans all through Manhattan, just giving me the hardest. Not, I mean, in a friendly way. Like, nobody's going to attack me or anything, but I'm just going to get a lot of crap. But something made me put it on.
Right on.
And, I mean, Kelly will vouch for me on this. We traveled all around Manhattan, and all we bumped into all day was Red Sox fans. Oh. And people were honking at us and cheering.
Wow.
And like all this crazy stuff. And it was this positive vibration that had started with my email at work and then putting the cap on.
It started before that. That's when you noticed it. Do you know what I'm saying? Like there was something in the air, because you're really intuitive and connected to energy and spirit and source.
Yeah.
There was something in the air and you caught a whiff of it, and that action you took was because of that.
That's probably, you're probably totally correct about that. Yeah. So anyway, I mean, as they say, the rest is history. Like the Red Sox then did something that no American professional sports team has ever done still, which is they were down 3-0 in a 7-game playoff series. They came back and won all 4. 2 of them had to go to extra innings for them to do it. They won the last 2 in New York. On enemy ground and in Yankee Stadium.
I remember watching some of those.
Yeah. And then they went on to beat the St. Louis Cardinals.
Was Sosa in those during that time?
No, that was Sammy Sosa's a little before that time, but
okay.
Yeah. But I just remember thinking, like, like it felt not that I got the Red Sox to win. But it was like there was a different, for some weird reason, the fandom had a different vibration that year. We were still pretty negative, but we weren't as negative as we used to be. And I think there was something about that third loss. Do you think it was
that whole 51%?
Yeah. Well, can you explain what you mean by that, though?
So Abraham talks about, you don't have to be elated and joyful all the time or whatever. They're like, if you can just be like 51% feeling better, then like there's like I think the 50% is if you're below 50%, you're in 49, you're more in doubt or fear, any kind of negative emotion. Once you cross that 50% mark in the emotional guidance kind of system, you're more in a positive emotion, and that that's the flip. And it sounds like that's what you're going to. And it kind of reminds me, because I'm sure you and Kelly were both excited about seeing each other, right? Like, it just kind of reminds me of
100%.
And so your vibration was just
Kelly,
like,
for the record, Kelly was not excited about being in New York City.
I'm sure.
But she was excited to see me.
Exactly. So the energy was good feeling energy, right?
Yeah, 100%.
And it can be for anything. Like, I love Abraham, like you, because you bring up the car so much. I'm going to use this analogy. Like, I don't have to think about the car and feel good in order to get it. I can feel good about spending time with my friends or getting to go to lunch at my favorite. I can feel good about anything and not even think about the car and attract the car in.
Yeah. I also think it's an interesting, I keep going back to the film Fever Pitch. There's an interesting parallel to something that gets revealed in that film that also happened, which is, and I've talked about this before, about the pro tennis player who was like ranked 65th, and then she beat Venus Williams in a final or quarterfinal or something. And it's always stuck with me because what she said was she knew she was going to lose. She knew she couldn't beat Venus Williams or Serena Williams. Sorry, I got mixed up. I think it was Serena. She knew she couldn't beat Serena Williams, so she was just going to try to focus on every single point, 1 point at a time, and win as many points as she could. Mm-hmm. And there was something about that letting go of the I have to win that allowed her to beat Serena Williams. Like, and nobody was more surprised than her. Like, she was like baffled. Yeah. Because she wasn't attached to, like, she wasn't tracking that the way that she normally would. She was tracking just being in the moment. Like, I know I'm going to lose, so I just want to, in the moment. If I can win like 18 points against Serena Williams, that's going to be awesome. So I'm just going to try to win as many as I can. Because what happened with that 15-6 loss or whatever it was on Game 3 in 2004 between the Red Sox and the Yankees is, I think it sort of was it looked so definite that we were going to lose, mm-hmm. and lose badly. We were going to lose 4 straight, getting crushed in potentially the last 2 games on our home turf. Yeah. Like, it was so bad. Somehow that unlocked, the attachment to like, oh, but we've got to win. We've got to win, which is the resistance, right? Which is actually not winning. It's losing. Yeah. But in Fever Pitch, they actually talk about that moment as well, because Jimmy Fallon is following the Red Sox season, and he's like just all wound up, and and then when they lose 3 in a row, because that's the season that's in the film, he and all of his friends are just like completely depressed, morose, like they assume, as a lot of us did, that they're going to lose. And they go out to a restaurant and they see 3 of the Red Sox players, which they got the real players to be in the film. Nice. And they're just having dinner and laughing and kind of talking. Mm. And Jimmy Fallon's 2 friends are enraged because they're like, we devote our lives to these guys and they just dropped 3 in a row. And like, what the heck are they doing having dinner?
And why are they happy?
Why are they happy? But Jimmy Fallon's character has a real epiphany, which I've always loved and remember, which is that it's like, you know what? Those guys are amazingly talented. They're not thinking about this curse that the fans have invented. Like, they're not involved in that. Like, they have prepared their whole lives for this, but they also go to work every day to do this as a job, and they love it. But it's also like they do their best and then they go home and they have their families and whatever. Like, him seeing them not take it as such a big deal as his friends and him were,
living life and not
living their life anyway,
and having it affect them in a negative way.
Yeah, like, it's just really incredible. But
dude, this is perfect. This is so law of attraction, art of allowing, like, our thoughts and everything.
So, final story. About the Red Sox and that year, and this is in one of the film documentaries that ESPN or somebody made about it. I think it was the New England Sports Network made a documentary about that whole run of the playoffs. There was a guy, and gosh, I'm gonna forget his name. He was one of my favorite players too. I'm not gonna remember his name. Maybe it'll pop into my head. But one of the players who was kind of a jokester on the Red Sox that year, literally, and there's film in the documentary of him doing this. He, in the pregame for Game 4, so they've lost the first 3. Right. The last one was a disaster. Yeah. In the pregame for Game 4, he goes around talking to reporters and all of his fellow players. And he says, he's got this whole thing about, like, they better put us away tonight. Yankees better put us away tonight, man. I don't want to be the Yankees if we win it tonight, man. If we win tonight, man. I mean, and he walks them through. And he has this very specific visualization of, he's like, well, if we win tonight, that's Game 4. Well, Game 5, we have our second best pitcher going, and he's going to be lights out. So we're definitely going to win if we win Game 4, we're definitely going to win Game 5. Well, Game 6, we have our number 1 pitcher. So we're definitely winning that game.
Right.
And then game sevens throughout history have been a total crapshoot. So we can totally win game 7. So if the Yankees are no one's good for them, they better beat us tonight, man. Don't let us win tonight. Don't let us win tonight. And he literally passed a vibration around to reporters, teammates, coaches. There's literally like they had him mic'd up, and he literally did this.
He was being a deliberate creator.
He was being a deliberate creator.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, sorry, I've gone so far on New England sports, but another similar story, and people who hate Tom Brady, I understand. But the year 3-4 years ago, when the New England Patriots came all the way back, they were down 38-3 or something like that, some crazy score at halftime. They came all the way back, tied it up against the Atlanta Falcons, then went to overtime, then scored a touchdown and won the Super Bowl. And two of the players that I'm just blanking on names. I got to prep for these sports shows we do.
Wait a minute.
If we ever do another one. Anyway, they were talking to Tom Brady. They mentioned after the game that during halftime, the only thing they said about the current situation was, this is going to be one of the most incredible comeback stories in the history of the National Football League.
Nice.
And they would literally, and they knew that if they went to overtime, it would be the first time in the history of the Super Bowl. Yeah. And they literally were saying, isn't it going to be crazy when we do the first overtime in Super Bowl history? And I'll be like, yeah, that's going to be crazy, man. And that's literally like, they were believing it. Yeah. That doesn't mean that if they had lost, they would have lost their minds and gone crazy. But like, they were aware of like, if we're going to have any shot at this thing, we have to play our best game physically, but we also have to have a mindset that allows us to win.
And that's everything, right? That is everything.
I think that's why
it's a lot of it.
Yeah, that's
why it's more powerful than the other physical action. Like our mind power is more powerful than the physical action we take.
It drives me crazy because in a good way. I don't mean that it's a negative, but like in the music world, I read a lot of biographies of bands of like how they made it, and it's hilarious to me because almost every band that's ever been successful at least in the American music industry, it's like you read their story and they did a lot of hard work and they did a lot of good things. Like, I'm not saying they did nothing, but it's like their breaks are always like these, it's hard to see them as anything but crazy out of the blue things that, no one could have predicted. And it drives me crazy sometimes because I will see bands interviewed and they'll just be like, yeah, we weren't even looking for a label, like the record label showed up and like, they just were like, do you want to be on our label? We were like, oh, okay. Yeah. Whereas there's all these musicians out there who are just like, we want to get signed. Why can't we get signed? And like, we don't know that, like, that's the vibration.
For those of you listening, Collin has his hands both fists up, like grabbing like a steering wheel, almost like, why isn't this happening? Yeah. And that's the physical look of what resistance looks like. As we're saying, I want, why isn't it here? So, yeah. Well, and so many, any type of sports, they have coaches, they have mind coaches, they have people come in and they, and there's even studies where they hook athletes up to probes or similar, whatever. And then they have them run it through their mind, what they would actually do. And all these things go firing off in the brain and even the muscles actually respond as if they're actually doing it. And so that's how powerful our thoughts are, and visualizing, imagining it.
Yeah. Our brains actually don't know, like if you put a virtual reality headset on and it looks like you're falling off a building, like your brain doesn't know the difference. You're going to feel very scared.
I have a physical response. Like, like those IMAX are great when you're like the shots and then you come over the waterfall and you start flying and it's like, whoa, we're actually going to. It's wonderful.
Well, I hope this has been helpful. I enjoyed this discussion.
There was art of allowing and law of attraction in there and a lot of good stuff. It was sprinkled all around.
All right. Well, we hope you got something out of this episode. Thank you so much for listening to our podcast. If you're listening to the audio version, And thank you so much for watching if you watch us on the YouTube channel here. And thank you again for liking the episode, for following, subscribing, and reviewing us on your podcast platform, and subscribing to the YouTube channel here. We really appreciate that. If people want to find you, Stephanie, how can they get in touch with you?
On Instagram at powerinjoy, POWERINJOY, and same website.com.
All right. And you can always follow me and also send me a direct message if you want on Instagram. I'm at Collin Daniels, Collin_Daniels_Worster, WORSTER. Thank you so much again for listening and watching. We wish you a happy and abundant week ahead, and we look forward to seeing you again on the next episode of Co-Creation Station. Bye, everybody.